Names become shorthand for fear, suspicion, or violence, and those who inhabit them are reduced to stereotypes rehearsed by outsiders.
And why? Best place in Russia is Dagestan. Because the people are amazing in Dagestan. Dagestanis have a reputation as being fearless, and I suppose they are fearless, but they're also bloody nice people. They're the most welcoming people, and they really open my eyes to hospitality of Dagestan and how wonderful the people are down there. And this is the thing about Dagestan. Dagestanis have like a bad reputation in Russia, to be honest with you, amongst Russians from the north. Oh, those bloody Dags. They're called Dags. Those Dags. But knobs out, put your knobs back in for Dagestan. But they're actually like the best of Russians, They like behave themselves, they're like proud, they protect their land. They fought off the terrorists when they came over from Chechnya. The Dagestanis went up to Botlich, to the mountains, and to Gagatlich, and they stood there and they said, "You're not coming to Dagestan." And the terrorists, what was it? Khattab? What was the name of the terrorists? The main organization that came there. They came to the top of the mountain. They said, "We're coming to Dagestan." And the Dagestani said, "You ain't coming in here." And so they had a war, and a lot of people died in that. But it was just Dagestani villagers with fucking pitchforks, and I met some of them, and like old rifles that fought off the bloody terrorists. The terrorists weren't actually Chechens, but they came from Chechnya during the Chechen War. So the Dagestans are the best of the Russians, and they deserve to be recognized as that. So anyway, let's not go down the history of Dagestan. Okay, we've done Napoleon. Let's not go down the Dagestan versus Chechen terrorists, because I'm a bit of an expert on it. All right, there we go. Okay, what about the Kashmir issue? Fuck me, what is it? You just want me to get lynched wherever I go. Kashmir. Who does Kashmir belong to, should I say? Oh man, I don't know. I don't know, but what I do think is Ladakh should not be part of Kashmir. Okay, if people who don't know about India, what I'm about to say will make no sense, but give me 1 minute. Ladakh, and I know it's been separated now, but is a unique Buddhist culture and should never be part of Kashmir. Ladakh should be separate to protect their Buddhist culture from the Islamization of what was taking place. So that's it. I'm an expert on Ladakhi Kashmiri politics too. I'm so fucking clever, I didn't realise. Right, anyway, joking. How's Kolya? I don't know, but I'm sure. Sasha Grudinov, get your knobs out. Are you being arrested in Chechnya? No, there's a myth that I was arrested in Chechnya. And it's like, if I was arrested, I'd never get another Russian visa. Because once you've been arrested in Russia, you have to put that on your visa application form. And so I've never been arrested in Chechnya or anywhere in Russia. So no. Supergrass, good band.
To step into such places with open eyes is to confront not only the terrain, but also the burden of narratives that others have laid upon it. Travel in this sense is not the passive consumption of scenery, but a reckoning with history, rumor, and the politics of perception. Few regions illustrate this better than Dagestan in the North Caucasus and the contested territories of Kashmir. Dagestan is a case study in the dissonance between reputation and lived reality. For many in Russia, the word conjures an image of danger. Its mountains, villages, and cities are often framed as zones of perpetual conflict, associated with insurgency and unrest spilling over from neighboring Chechnya during the wars of the 1990s and early 2000s. Outsiders repeat these images until they harden into truths. Yet the traveler who takes the risk of entering, not with preconceptions but with curiosity, often encounters something profoundly different. Instead of hostility, one finds an almost overwhelming hospitality. The warmth of a Dagestani home, the generosity of its people, the pride with which they guard their traditions, all of these reveal themselves in direct contradiction to the myths that circulate elsewhere. This hospitality is not a superficial politeness. It arises from histories of resilience, from a culture shaped by centuries of defending its land and way of life. The collective memory of resistance against outside forces, whether imperial armies or roving militants, has created a society where solidarity and loyalty are paramount. To protect one's guest is not merely etiquette, but a matter of honor. To share food, to welcome a stranger, to insist on generosity, even when resources are scarce, these are acts woven into the fabric of daily life. For the traveler, the encounter with this ethos is often disarming. It forces one to reconsider the simplistic categories of dangerous or unsafe that dominate external perceptions. Dagestan's history illustrates the fragility of labels like terrorist or criminal that have been used to define the region. In the late 1990s, when armed groups crossed over from Chechnya, it was local villagers, farmers, elders, ordinary people who stood against them, often with little more than makeshift weapons and determination. These acts of defense, costly in lives, were not undertaken for geopolitical gain, but to preserve the integrity of communities, to safeguard homes, families, and traditions. Such moments, largely absent from the headlines, are central to understanding how Dagestanis see themselves. Pride in this defense is not a matter of chauvinism, but of survival. To dismiss it is to miss the heartbeat of the region. Yet, Dagestan's reputation within Russia remains ambivalent. It is admired and feared, respected and ridiculed. Stereotypes persist, often reducing its people to caricatures. Such dynamics are not unique to Dagestan. They appear whenever a periphery confronts the imagination of center. Moscow, St. Petersburg, and the cities of the Russian north project their anxieties onto the Caucasus, and in doing so, they obscure the humanity of those who live there. Travel, in this context, becomes an act of correction. It is not enough to read reports or listen to rumors. To walk the streets, to share meals, to hear stories firsthand, is to dismantle the edifice of prejudice brick by brick. If Dagestan challenges narratives of fear with lived experience of hospitality, Kashmir exposes the difficulty of even naming what one sees. To speak of Kashmir is to enter a labyrinth of claims and counterclaims, of histories that cannot be reconciled and futures that remain unresolved. The territory is not only a landscape of mountains and valleys, but also a palimpsest of identities, each one layered over another, each one contested. For generations, Kashmir has been a flashpoint between India and Pakistan, a place where borders are less lines on maps than wounds in memory. The outsider is often asked to take a position. Whose land is it? To whom does it belong? Yet to frame the question solely in terms of ownership is to miss the complexity of the lived experience of those within. For communities on the ground, the issue is not an abstract cartographic puzzle, but the texture of daily life under regimes of militarization, surveillance, and uncertainty. To live in Kashmir is to inhabit a space where political debates translate into checkpoints, where national pride manifests as curfews, and where identity is constantly negotiated under the gaze of states that claim authority. Amid this complexity, there are subregions such as Ladakh, whose cultural and religious particularities are often overshadowed. The Buddhist communities of Ladakh, with their monasteries, rituals, and distinctive traditions, represent a heritage that is vulnerable to the political tides sweeping through the broader region. To recognize this distinctiveness is not merely an academic exercise, but a moral one. Cultures that are subsumed under larger conflicts risk being erased, their voices drowned out by the louder narratives of nationalism and resistance. The preservation of such traditions demands careful attention, an acknowledgement that political boundaries should not obliterate cultural specificity. Travelers who reflect on Kashmir often find themselves caught in an uncomfortable position. To declare allegiance to one side risks offense, to express neutrality risks seeming evasive. Yet the honest response may be an acknowledgement of limits, the recognition that from the outside, one cannot fully grasp the weight of the situation. What one can grasp is the urgency of protecting the vulnerable, of ensuring that cultures like that of Ladakh are not extinguished in the crossfire of competing claims. The traveler's role is not to pronounce verdicts, but to bear witness, to amplify voices that might otherwise go unheard. Both Dagestan and Kashmir highlight a deeper theme: the way reputations, whether of regions or peoples, are constructed and weaponized. The dangerous Dagestani, the contested Kashmiri, these figures exist less as realities than as projections of external fears and ambitions. Yet beneath these projections lies a humanity that resists categorization. Hospitality in Dagestan, the spiritual resilience of Ladakh, the everyday endurance of Kashmiris, these do not fit neatly into geopolitical narratives. They persist stubbornly, reminding us that people are never reducible to the reputations imposed upon them. The traveler who chooses to enter these regions is confronted with the tension between perception and reality. On one hand, there is the constant reminder of risk, reinforced by friends, media, and governments. On the other, there is the lived experience of kindness, resilience, and dignity. To reconcile the two is not always possible. Instead, one learns to hold them together in uneasy balance. The world is not as dangerous as the fearful imagine, nor as simple as the naive hope.